I'm Michael Kane. I'm the director of the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants, and I'm very excited to introduce and welcome everybody to this webinar introducing the Tenant Education and Outreach Program. Um, I'm joined, my colleague Jason Lee is the host of the webinar. He's going to explain the rules. But first, I'll introduce Susie Shannon from AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Say hello, Susie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Shannon. I'm the policy director for Housing is a Human Right, which is a division of AIDS Healthcare Foundation. AIDS Healthcare Foundation was started in the 1980s as an AIDS hospice and has grown into an international organization in 47 countries and work in the fields of healthcare, housing advocacy, and our Food for Health food banks. And I'm very happy to be here today, and thank you for joining.
Great. And Libby Fernandez from HUD, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Libby Fernandez. I'm a supervisory program analyst in the Grants and New Funding branch with multifamily housing at HUD headquarters. And I am so very excited to be kicking off the first information session about the Tenant Education and Outreach Program. I think you all know this has been a long time coming, greatly anticipated, these resources to finally be available again to tenant organizations. And I'm especially excited to see how many people we already have who've joined. So that is absolutely great. Let me briefly introduce Andrew Santos, who is our program lead for the Tenant Education and Outreach Program, and Jay Wilkins is a management analyst on my team, who will also be working on TEO in the coming years. And yes, I will kick it back over to Michael and Jason, but welcome and very excited to finally be getting this effort going.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, that's for sure. So Jason, Jason is the assistant director. Do you want to introduce yourself and explain briefly what the rules of the webinar are?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Lee. I'm the assistant director here at the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants that's helping to administer this tenant education and outreach grant alongside the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. For those of you who haven't attended a webinar before, I'll just briefly go over some of the functions. If you look at the bottom part of your Zoom screen, you should see a couple of options, including the option to raise your hand if you have any questions throughout the presentation, as well as a Q&A button. If you click that Q&A, you'll be able to type in any specific questions you may have about topics that we cover, or any areas of the program that you would like further information on or that we haven't addressed. Go ahead and type those questions into the Q&A, and then we'll answer them all at the end of the webinar. We've reserved about 30 minutes of time to answer folks' questions about any program details, what the program will look like, or anything that you just need further clarification on. In addition, for those of you who have accessibility needs, there's an option to turn on closed captioning so that you can see the captions of everything that we say at the bottom of your screen. So if that's something that you require, I encourage you to go ahead and click that button so that you're able to see a live transcript as we speak. I think that covers it. Again, just any questions you have, just make sure to type them into the Q&A box, and then we'll make sure to address them at the end of the presentation.
And this slide presentation is going to be recorded and posted and made available to participants as well. So Jason, when I go to the first slide.
Let's get started.
Let's get started. So HUD has awarded $10 million for a Tenant Education and Outreach Grant, TEO, to the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and its partner, the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants, to subaward up to $300,000 over 3 years to local groups to organize project-based Section 8 tenants in their communities. The HUD award is from Section 514 of the Multifamily Affordable Housing Reform and Affordability Act, MARA, of 1997. HUD advertised this grant in 2023, but Section 514 It's been a source of funds off and on since 1997. The Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants played a role in advocating to create it. We testified before Congress to win a $10 million annual set aside for HUD for technical assistance to tenants to help them organize. And we've been advocating for implementation of those funds in different forms for many years. So we're thrilled that HUD has advertised this $10 million and that we were, when we put in for it, that we were selected. Matt's role, our role is we are a co-applicant with AHF, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, to market the program, uh, uh, screen and recommend subaward applicants, and to provide training and support to the subawardees. So we're primarily responsible for this slide presentation. But so, Susie, do you want to say more about what your role
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. So AIDS Healthcare Foundation is the intermediary or the um, primary organization, with our co-applicant being Massachusetts Alliance for HUD Tenants. And then MAHT and AHF are responsible for negotiating and approving the sub-award proposals. So we'll be working together, looking at applications and working with organizations in terms of helping everyone to understand like what um, what the criteria is.
Great. So next slide. So the goal of the TEO program is to build the capacity of project-based Section 8 tenants to do several things. One is to work productively with their property management and owners to get things done that benefit tenants, to hold management accountable for property conditions, and to improve management and oversight of Section 8 housing. And finally, in the case of buildings that are at risk of converting to market, which some buildings will be, to advocate for the preservation of at-risk housing. Next slide. So, who can apply? Eligible organizations that propose to serve at least 25 units of one or more HUD multifamily housing developments, where at least 75% of the apartments receive project-based Section 8. We'll get into what's covered by that later in this slideshow. The eligible organizations that can apply include: one, tenant-affiliated, nonprofit, community-based organizations at the community, city, metropolitan, neighboring rural community, or state levels. So it's like an area-wide organizing group. And number two, established or newly formed legitimate tenant organizations at the building level, a group which is defined by HUD in 24 CFR Part 245 as a group that meets regularly, operates democratically, represents all tenants in the development, and is completely independent of owners and managers. So that's the definition of a legitimate tenants group.
To receive TEO funds, a subawardee must have an organizational bank account at a licensed financial institution. So that means in order to apply, you don't have to have a bank account, but in order to receive funds, you'll have to have a bank account if you are selected as one of the sub-grantees. A newly formed tenant organization can apply on their own, or they can submit a joint application with another more experienced organization or CBO in their area. So if you are just starting out and you don't have a bank account, it may be advantageous for you to form an alliance with a community-based organization in your area that can help you and will have like a lot of the experience and infrastructure that you would need to be successful. Current or prospective owners or property managers are not eligible to apply, including resident-owned cooperatives. So unfortunately, if you are in a cooperative as an owner, a tenant owner, you would not be able to apply. And then resident-controlled nonprofit owners and housing authorities are also not eligible.
Okay.
Next slide.
Well, okay, what buildings are eligible for TEO assistance? So it's privately owned HUD multifamily housing developments with at least 25 units with project-based Section 8 contracts that serve at least 75% of the residents. And buildings receiving project-based Section 8 can be from one or more of several HUD programs. New construction, substantial rehab, that's most of them. There's another program called Loan Management Set Aside, or LMSA. These are buildings that were previously had HUD subsidized mortgages and Section 8 contracts that were provided that have since been extended. Another is property disposition set aside, Section 8. And Section 202-811, elderly handicapped housing, Section 202-8. Those are all programs that have different types of project-based Section 8. Now, another type of eligible building would be former public housing developments that have been converted to private ownership through the HUD Rental Assistance Demonstration, or RAD program. But there are two paths for RAD conversions. One is through project-based rental assistance, Section 8. Those buildings are eligible for TEO assistance, but not project-based vouchers, which is another program that's administered by a different branch of HUD, the Public and Indian Housing Branch. So they are not eligible for TEO assistance. And roughly, just so people know, roughly half of the RAD conversions nationwide are converted to project-based vouchers, so they would not be eligible. Okay, go ahead, Jason, next. Next slide. So the federally assisted buildings or other types of HUD-assisted housing that are not eligible, that would include any public housing developments owned by a local housing authority, by a public housing agency, not eligible. Properties that receive only mobile Section 8 tenant protection or enhanced vouchers. Those are mobile vouchers that are assigned to a tenant and not to the building, and that people can use if they can find a landlord that will accept them. So those buildings would not be eligible for TEO assistance. Properties that receive only project-based vouchers, including properties converted to private ownership through RAD, are not eligible for assistance. And finally, properties whose federal assistance is only through the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which is administered not by HUD, but by the Internal Revenue Service. They are not eligible either. I'm mentioning this, though, because there are what are called LIHTC buildings that also have project-based Section 8. And if 75% of the units in such a building are project-based Section 8, then the building is eligible for assistance. Okay.
Next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so what are eligible uses for TEO funds? So tenant and organizer training costs, including travel to training events. Staff resident outreach coordinators, which would include salary plus fringe benefits. Resident service stipends for tenant group members who work on TEO activities. Limited direct overhead costs such as office or meeting space rental, flyers, printing, translation and interpretation. And these, again, I just want to stress that these are for direct costs only here. And then reasonable food and daycare costs for tenant meetings, cell phone, camera, laptop, or tablet, internet service for tenant organizations and activities. Okay, publicizing and conducting tenant meetings, documenting persistent unresolved fiscal condition concerns and owner responses, addressing basic questions about tenant rights and responsibilities, developing effective working relationships with owners and managers, developing effective working relationships with HUD, Real Estate Assessment Center, which is REAC, performance-based contract administrators, the PBCAs, and state and local oversight agencies.
All right. Activities that are not, unfortunately, not eligible uses for TEO funding include lobbying activities. So lobbying activities are strictly prohibited since this is a federal grant. No funds distributed through the TEO subaward can be used for lobbying at any level. That does not include administrative lobbying. Administrative advocacy on policy or enforcement matters is an allowable use of TEO funds, and that an example of that would be advocating to HUD for changes to certain policy or enforcement matters that you think would improve the quality of life for tenants in the buildings that you're working in. TEO funds must not be used for direct or indirect lobbying activities, including grassroots lobbying, whether for or against legislation or referenda at any level. And they cannot be used to contribute to a political party, campaign, political action committees, or any other organizations that might be taking explicit stances in that way. And TEO funds must not be used for recreational activities, such as parties or events, landlord/tenant legal services for individual households, and activities funded from other sources, such as resident participation funds in RAD converted properties, or pre-award activities, i.e., the work that you put into the application prior to receiving a subaward. Those cannot be eligible uses for TEO funds as well. So all of that work must be billed prior to receiving the TEO subaward.
So how to apply for funds? MAHT and AHF will open the application portal for TEO sub-applicants to apply for funds sometime later this fall, after HUD provides an approved application form. So we're waiting on HUD to finalize that in their conversations with the Office of Management and Budget. Once they do that, it'll go live, and we will contact everyone that expressed interest and signed up for an interest list, as well as all of the participants in the 2 webinars that we're conducting this month. We will use an online application platform. We have identified one, we're negotiating with them to one that will be compatible with Section 508 accessibility requirements. So people will have flexible application options. The required components in your application, once it's listed, you must identify any PBRA, project-based rental assistance, Section 8 properties that you plan to serve. You also must document that you have received the endorsement of 50% of the households in each property you propose to serve. That's an application requirement. Your application will not be considered until you have submitted that documentation. You also will be asked to describe your organization structure and operating procedures, and have a goal and draft goals of your project and draft plan of proposed activities and a budget and a timeline. So that will all be the elements that you have to put in. Now, let's go to the next slide, Jason. Next slide. So this is the one that is when people have heard about it are most concerned about is the 50% endorsement signature requirement. So want to talk a little bit more about that here. Sub-applicants must provide documentation that they have received the endorsement of 50% of the households in each property they propose to serve at the time of the application. The sign-in signatures for previous tenant meetings may count toward the 50% endorsement requirement, assuming that you notified the people at a meeting that this was going to be discussed, and they signed up for the meeting. That sign-in list can count towards your signature requirement. Um, each household that signs can only endorse the application of one organization or CBO at a time, and no more than one person per household may endorse an application. Um, so if a household endorses your application and your application is subsequently denied, that household may endorse an application from someone else. These are requirements that HUD included in the notice of funding opportunity, and uh, they really can't be changed, unfortunately, because I know this is going to be a hurdle for a lot of people, but that's the way it is. So next slide.
Okay, joint applicants. So if you are a joint applicant, you will need to submit a memorandum of understanding or letter of agreement that one demonstrates a commitment to work collaboratively during the 3-year period of performance, identifies which party is the lead applicant, and describes the respective roles of each co-applicant. If a co-applicant is providing an MOU or letter for more than one application, they must indicate this in each application and provide a list of all TO applications on which they are co-applicants. Next slide.
So the applicant review process, AHF and MAHT are jointly responsible for negotiating and approving subaward proposals. Um, MAHT will and AHF will review the applications and make subaward decisions on a first come, first served basis. That's important. You have to get, if you have an advantage, if you get your application in right after the portal opens. Um, and so we'll be reviewing them. AHF will be reviewing them, um, and we will be communicating with sub applicants to refine their goals, draft plans, and proposed budgets, as well as to notify sub applicants of any technical deficiencies with deadlines for correction within 30 days. Next slide.
Reasons for denying an application. So AHF and MAT, we may deny an application if we determine that one, you're ineligible. And that could be for a number of reasons. It may be that your tenant group doesn't meet HUD standards for the definition of a legitimate tenant organization. It may be that you or a co-applicant actually own or manage properties. If we determine that you meet any of the basic threshold requirements, if you do not meet those threshold requirements, we will deny your application. If your application is incomplete or does not propose eligible activities, we may deny your application. If the proposed activities do not fall within the period of performance of the TEO grant, if your proposed budget includes ineligible or unreasonable costs for activities, we'll, of course, if we determine that your budget includes something that would be eligible, but the cost attached to it, we think there might be some reason to reconsider that cost, we'll advise you of that recommendation. And if it's not promptly revised after that recommendation, then we may reject your application. If you and AHF and MAT are unable to agree on a final budget or a final set of proposed activities or plans, After reasonable attempts to sort of reach an agreement on what the project will look like, then we may deny your application. And then finally, if you apply near the end of the funds disbursement period, and your budget exceeds the amount of money that we have left to give out in subawards, we may deny your application. So the appeal process to HUD, notification that the application has been denied will come from us, and it'll be accompanied by a denial of award letter explaining in writing our reason for denying you, and it'll be any number of those reasons that I discussed in the previous slide. But you as a sub-applicant have the right to appeal that denial to HUD if you think you've been rejected based on a requirement that you actually meet, if you think that you were not provided sufficient time or opportunities to correct any deficiencies in the application that we've highlighted, other than that basic threshold requirement of getting the endorsement of a majority of households in the buildings that you propose to serve. Your appeal has to be made within 45 days of us sending the letter out, notifying you of the denial of award. And then HUD will make a binding determination 45 days after the date of your appeal. All right.
Okay, if you are a successful sub-applicant, selected organizations will execute a cooperative agreement with AHF and MAHT for execution of proposed activities. The subawardees must notify the residents of properties they propose to serve of the subaward within 30 days of acceptance. Then AHF and MAHT will work with subawardees to refine their plans, the budget and timeline, and amend these documents during the subaward period of performance. And subawardees will submit monthly invoices to AHF. We will primarily be taking care of a lot of the financial end of the grant, including any advanced payment requests, if applicable, and meet at least once quarterly with MAHT regarding performance, progress on issues raised and resolved. Next slide.
So MAHT, the Mass Alliance of Tenants, is primarily responsible for organizing training and support to the subawardees, and that takes many forms. Our qualifications for that, we've been around for more than 40 years. We're probably the oldest, one of the oldest, certainly continuous HUD tenant organizations. We have an all-tenant board and a lot of experience. We've saved about 13,600 apartments that were once at risk as affordable housing over the years, one building at a time through tenant organizing. So that's our experience. We also organized and staffed 45 national training conferences over the years, primarily through the National Alliance of HUD Tenants, which we staffed up until a couple of years ago. And so we have that background of experience and lots of resource materials to share. So what we will do in this program, working with AHF and HUD, is that we will organize interactive conference calls and webinars. They will be on issues and skills like how to start a tenant group, how to enforce the right to organize, what are the ways to combat management interference around that, how to get improvements in your property by negotiating and working with management and owners. So those are the kinds of workshops, specialized workshops that we will organize. Those will be primarily on Zoom. But we will also commit to doing at least one on-site field training in your city each year. We think that there will be that'll be manageable. We've done something like that in Vista projects in the past, and that would be tailored to your needs locally. We would do a locally tailored training event for tenant leaders and organizers, depending on what you need. In addition, we plan, and HUD is approved in our TEO proposal, 3 national in-person training conferences, each one of which would have at least 12 peer-based workshops during the conference, as well as meetings with HUD officials around policy and enforcement. So those would be national conferences that we will commit to organizing over the next few years. It would have to start after the initial round of awards and a period of time when people can get started with their work. So we don't have a date or even a approximate date, but that's our commitment to you to provide those resources. Then in addition to that, or I should say that our approach to doing these trainings is not a top-down, we know it all, we're just going to tell you what it's all about. We always have organized conferences by bringing together all the organizers and leaders and to plan workshops that meet their needs and to recruit tenant presenters to tell their best practice stories, so from different parts of the country. So it would make it much more interesting and rewarding. And we know how to make that work. And so the awardees, you who are selected, will be essentially co-sponsoring these conferences. It should also, we have an all-tenant board, some of whose members are on this call, and they have a lot of experience themselves. They will be available to help with the trainings that we do. And you, as you organize tenant leaders, will be helping with training. We'll create a system that's participatory. One thing to mention is that when you put your budget proposal together, be sure to include funding for attending a conference. We are not paying for the whole thing from our budget. So we need people, if they want to come, to pay for the travel and the hotel rooms, and we'll probably have to have a conference registration fee to cover food and audio visual, food during a conference. That none of that is determined or pinned down yet, but if it would behoove people when you put your budget in, if you're, say, asking for $300,000 over 3 years, to put a portion of that for tenants to travel to a national conference or organizing staff. They would have to be project-based Section 8 tenants or people working with them. But you would want to put that in your budget, or it's hopefully would, but then we'll see how many people are doing that, and then we can judge from there what a conference, when it would be held and what it would look like. So HUD has suggested that, putting in up to $1,500 per person. It may actually turn out to be less, but that would be a prudent thing to do to make sure that you have money in your budget to spend for tenant travel to a conference. We have learned over the years that in-person training like that is by far the most valuable and productive and exciting to tenant leaders. So we're looking forward to being able to do that again. It's been 5 years since there has been an in-person training conference for HUD tenants. The last thing that we will do is we at MAHT will provide on-call technical assistance by phone and email to all of you that are selected, to organizers, tenant leaders, and so on. You are the frontline people providing those services, but we're here to back you up.
All right. Before we move into the Q&A, we're approaching the end of the webinar here, but before we move into the Q&A section, we know that a lot of you, especially if this is your first foray into tenant organizing as part of the Tenant Education and Outreach program, may not be sure whether your building qualifies or whether the buildings that you are hoping to serve qualify. So we wanted to devote some time to introducing you all to the National Housing Preservation Database, which is a database of subsidized developments across the country compiled by the National Housing Law Project. It is, in Matt's opinion, the best option for checking if a building you plan to work in is eligible for TEO funding. As we saw, HUD subsidized buildings through a variety of programs, and the preservation database will allow you to check the types of subsidies applied to each building and how many units within that building have each type of subsidy. So it's a powerful tool that you all can use as potential applicants to check if a building for which you're interested in applying for TEO funding has at least 25 units of project-based rental assistance and is 75% project-based rental assistance overall. That said, the preservation database can be overwhelming to those who are unfamiliar with it, so we're hoping to spend some time here just to do a quick walkthrough. So just a quick hold as we actually navigate to the live site, and then we'll get started with just a quick walkthrough and then move to Q&A. All right, so this is what the website looks like once you log in. You see National Housing Preservation Database up at the top. Once you've logged in and created an account, and it'll be about 30 minutes between the time that you create the account and for the account administrators to approve your account. But once you're in, go ahead and click this blue Full Data Access button, and it'll immediately open up to a somewhat intimidating spreadsheet. But this spreadsheet, as you can see, has 6,045 pages to it. It lists all developments across the country that have been compiled into this database that have some form of HUD or otherwise publicly provided subsidy to the development. And there's a large range of characteristics by which you can search for and filter these developments to check if the development that you're interested in working in is eligible for TEO funds. As you can see right here, there's an option to search by state. So if I were to, for example, search for Wisconsin, this would list all subsidized developments that there was information on in the state of Wisconsin. You can see there's 216 pages of buildings in Wisconsin that are listed here. And then I can further search and filter this by city. So if I wanted to look for just those buildings in Milwaukee, it'll show that there's 64 pages of buildings that receive some form of subsidy, whether active or inactive, in Milwaukee. So we can just take a look at a specific example. We'll take a look first at this Golda Meir House development. And as you can see, it'll list the property name, the property address, the city, the state and the zip code, as well as the total number of units and the number of types of subsidies applied, and then whether it's active, and then the period during which those subsidies will be active. So if you search by city, you'll have this full list, and then go ahead and navigate to details here on the right-hand side for the listing that you want to see a little more information on. If you click details, it'll pull up just this centralized profile of the building, where again, it will list the name of the development, its address, the total number of units, and then the breakdown of unit types here, as well as the target population for the building, if any such targets exist. And the thing that you all as potential applicants should be looking at is right here under subsidy name. Section 8 means that this building is receiving Section 8 project-based rental assistance. The subname lists the specific type of project-based rental assistance that the building receives, and you can just take a moment to compare this subsidy subname to the list of project-based rental assistance property programs that we listed earlier in the presentation to see if it's one of the qualifying ones. But as a general rule, any building receiving a Section 8 project-based rental assistance subsidy will be eligible for TEO funds, barring two particular characteristics that you want to make sure to check. The first is you want to make sure that there's at least 25 units of project-based rental assistance in the development. We see here that the number of assisted units that are receiving the Section 8 project-based rental assistance subsidy is 126, which is more than 25, so it meets that test. The other test is that the building has to be at least 75% assisted with project-based rental assistance. And we can see here, out of the 127 units, 126 receive that subsidy, which is greater than the 75% requirement. We can compare that to another building in Milwaukee, say Trinity Manor Apartments. which you can see here, the name, the address, and total number of units. Unfortunately, you can see that the total number of units is 20 and the number of assisted units is just 19. So even though it is more than 75% project-based rental assistance, it has less than the required minimum of 25 units of project-based rental assistance. So this building on its own would not be eligible for TEO funding. There's a number of other points of information that you can check through this database. You can see here, you can see the name of the owner, whether it's a profit motivated or nonprofit owner, as well as the name of the management company and its type, whether it's a nonprofit or profit motivated, and then check the ratio of the rent to FMR as well. For buildings where there are multiple subsidies, we see some buildings that receive, in addition to project-based rental assistance, a LIHTC subsidy managed by the IRS. If a building is only LIHTC, as Michael said earlier, that building would not be eligible. But if a building receives the project-based rental assistance subsidy in addition to the LIHTC subsidy, as long as it meets the 25 units and the greater than 75% requirements, that building may be eligible. As a note, the subsidy subname, we mentioned that this describes the specific type of program, of project-based rental assistance program that is applied to the building. The National Housing Preservation Database does provide a glossary that you can use to look up the particular acronym if you're interested in the particular type of project-based rental assistance subsidy that you're working with in that building. To access that glossary, you can just go ahead to documentation and then go to data dictionary. And then I would recommend that you download the data dictionary using this button right here, and then navigate to page 36. This is what page 36 of that data dictionary will look like. And then you can use the links here to check exactly what that subname acronym looks like. So I'll go ahead and stop there. That was just a quick walkthrough of one tool that you can use to verify the eligibility of your building, and it's the one that we at the Mass Alliance of HUD Tenants recommend. That being said, I think I can turn it back over to the panel here for the Q&A section.
That's great. Excellent. Thank you, Jason. So hopefully this will generate some questions for Q&A.
So I'll go ahead and list them out. It looks like we have about 18 questions so far.
Okay.
From Linda Wadley, we have, she's asking, is 501c3 nonprofit corporation absolutely necessary to qualify as a single legitimate tenant association, given provided that we meet all the other requirements for eligibility?
A very good question. My understanding is that you do not have to have a 501c3 to be able to apply for TEO money. You would have to have a bank account, and you probably have to be incorporated to have a bank account. And you also have to show some capacity to manage the funds. One question that we have asked HUD to clarify, which we don't have an answer yet, is whether you would also have to register in the federal grant registry, which is called SAM, which generally recipients of federal money must be registered in SAM. We had to do that to apply. We're not clear whether subawardees will have to do that as well. Libby, do you all have an answer on that question yet?
I mean, I believe so. Probably for practical purposes. So subrecipients fall into something of a gray area. There are circumstances where subrecipients do not need to be registered in SAM.gov. But certainly the safest thing would be to be registered.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are likely to be practical reasons why it is likely to your advantage to be registered. And on the 501c3 point, I would just say that if you ever plan on becoming a 501c3, you should probably do that before you get your tax ID number from the IRS. Because entities that get a taxpayer ID number and then later incorporate as a 501c3 will need to get a new taxpayer identification number. So which means you will now have two TINs. It makes a lot of things complicated come tax time. So yes, if you ever plan on becoming a 501c3 as an organization, then I strongly recommend that you kind of do that at the outset. But if you've determined that that's you don't want to become a 501c3 for whatever reason, then it is not required. But I would definitely recommend registration in sam.gov, even though I'm not 100% sure that it would be required in all circumstances for this.
Yeah, that is advisable. For a CBO, by definition, will probably have a 501c3 already. We would recommend registering in SAM just to be safe. I should mention that updating if you have SAM registry now or had it, and you're updating it, I found it rough sledding. I think some changes may have been instituted in the process to make it much more difficult. It took me 2 weeks to do an ordinary renewal. So just to give you the heads up. In any event, if that's a good idea if you are already a C3 and are a CBO to do that.
We have some further questions.
Yeah,
we have another question. What type of documents are needed to prove that 50% of the households in a building have endorsed your application?
Very good question. It's either a petition that is signed by people, or you can use sign-in sheets from meetings. Sign-in sheets for meetings. If the meeting announcement or the agenda of the meeting had this as one item, then that you certainly could count the sign-in sheets. You can go back. We asked HUD about how far back could your meeting sign-in sheets go, and we agreed that from the time that we started advertising this webinar, certainly from today's webinar. So if you go forth and start having a meeting and getting signatures, those would count after today toward the application requirement. And again, we don't have a green light to accept applications yet. So people that are on this call, it would behoove you to, if you're interested in applying, to start getting those signatures now so that you're ready to go. Because once the applications are live, it's first come, first serve. We have to look at your proposal, first come, first serve. Doesn't matter how big or how small or how much other documentation you give. It's first come, first serve. So it would behoove you to get those signatures now.
I would recommend that if you're using the sign-in sheet approach, that you have something at the top of the paper that says, I endorse, the tenant association's application, and that people put their unit number with their signature so that we can make sure that we're only counting each unit once.
That's good point.
But yes, we're not looking to make it hard to document this. You don't have to have a separate form for each household. But yeah, just so that you make sure that people understand that what they're signing is endorsing your application and that we know what units they're in.
Okay, good. Next question.
We have another question related to that. Someone is asking, is it 50% of project-based Section 8 households or 50% of all households in the building, whether they're project-based rental assistance tenants or not?
A good question. I think it's of all the units in the building, provided the building is eligible. That 75% of the units would have to have project-based Section 8, but I think all units in the building would count. Is that what your, that's a good question. We could take that back and discuss it with HUD. That's my understanding. Libby, do you have a
Actually, I'm checking the NOFO right now. I'm just going to confirm what it says, but I'll answer.
Yeah, just so you all know, the NOFO that HUD published is like the Bible. We have to comply with everything that's in the NOFO. And we are also preparing a TEO website, which will have the NOFO and a lot of other basic documents on it, which we hope to have live within a week or so.
Okay, so it is from a majority of the occupied units.
Okay.
So if you have vacant units, you don't need to count those.
Yeah, I think their question isn't vacant units. It's totally, there might be,
Yeah.
25% of the units could be tax
Yeah.
credit units that are not Section 8, but it sounds like it's 50% of the occupied units in the building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Regardless of whether or not.
Yeah, that answers that. Thank you, Libby. Okay. Next question, Jason.
Sure. We have a question asking, given the requirement that 50% of households endorse, are we limited to the properties that we gain the 50% endorsement from throughout the 3-year grant program? I believe this person is asking, can we add more buildings as we proceed through the grant period, provided we get those 50% signature requirements?
Very good question. The short answer is yes, you can add buildings later, but you also, if you're applying, you would probably be, if you want to get more money at the front end, if you wanted to get 300,000 over 3 years, you would want to put in, a reasonable number of buildings. Let's say you had 4 buildings that had an average of 150 units. Section 8 buildings have an average of 150 units each. You could do that and propose to hire up to 4 part-time resident service coordinators to work with those 4 buildings, or a single full-time person to work with the 4 buildings. If you then get the money, you could your organization is certainly free to work with other buildings, but you wouldn't. If you had full funding from TEO, I don't think you would need to add more buildings to TEO. Presumably your other staff would be freed up to do other organizing. So, but yes, you can. Let's say you didn't get 300,000 and you wanted to add buildings later, you can do that. Oh, then we would review that.
Yeah, I'll just add that there is sort of a time component to it where we can only amend the agreement and add additional funds that provided that funds are remaining to be dispersed. So
Right.
just keep that in mind as you begin collecting those signatures. We have another question.
To clear one other thing to clarify, the TEO grant is a total of 10 million, but AHF and MAHT have an administrative budget out of that that funds our work on this program. So there's the amount available for sub grants, sub awards is 8.5 million. And it's a 5-year period of performance. But in theory, we could commit all of that in the next 2 months. It depends on who applies, our review process, and who's qualified.
So we have some further questions about the 50% requirement. I'll group some of them together. How are TEO applicants supposed to seek the endorsement of 50% of households in at-risk project-based rental assistance properties without first securing funding for door knocking and engaging with those households? And relatedly, how are applicants meant to prioritize between dozens, if not hundreds, of possibly eligible properties if such an endorsement is required before applying and receiving funds?
Very good question. The way the program is set up, you have to do this before you apply. So that means you would have to have either volunteer or staff resources to go out and get the signatures before the application is submitted.
Yeah, the intent of the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, was to get resources to existing organizations, whether they're new or long established. But really the priority was properties where work is already being done rather than on organizing new buildings, which is not to say that you couldn't do this. But I think it might be a tall order if this is a building where there's been no previous organizing activity. Yes, which is not to say you shouldn't try if you have properties that you want to work with. But you may want to consider focusing on properties where you already have organizing activities going on and where you are likely to get the endorsement of a lot of the tenants in a pretty short period of time.
Right. So organized tenant groups that are already organized have a leg up. You know, they can collect the signatures more readily. And if you put in for several buildings that you're already organizing and you get approved for enough to hire, you know, to use up $300,000 for staff and tenant travel, uh, hopefully that would free up other resources in your organization, right? Other staff in your organization to do more. And that's where you could bring in the new people.
And that
So
also includes organizations that don't currently have any funding at all.
Right.
If you are an organization that has been doing organizing work at properties and currently is doing that, with little to no financial resources, then this might be a good opportunity for your group.
Right.
So that leads into another question. Are the dollar award amounts dependent on how many properties and or the size of the properties that are considered eligible when a TEO applicant applies?
Very good question. The NOFO doesn't really give guidance on that. Um, we will have to figure that out going forward. I think a reasonableness, like your proposed budget and work plan and goals would hopefully be reasonable. And that's about the main criterion we have to
I
look
mean,
at that.
it depends on your program activities.
And,
And I think different organizations have different goals, different things that they would like to do with these resources. So it really depends on what are your goals and priorities, what financial resources do you need to accomplish those activities, and for whichever ones are eligible. Since of course your organization may have some expenses that are not eligible uses of these funds that you would need to fund through other sources. But at least for the eligible activities, propose what you would like to do, and what your goals are. And if the funds are available and it's a reasonable budget for what you're proposing, then it's not really necessarily about how many units. For instance, if you are planning to hire a resident outreach coordinator, then you would need to account for appropriate salary and benefits for that person. If you are not planning to hire a coordinator, then you might have a very different amount of money for what you're planning to do.
right. And this is not in the NOFO. There's nothing that says this, but our experience with the National Vista project that we used to coordinate, three of them over the years, is that a good organizer should be able to handle between 3 and 5 tenant groups per year, new groups per year, and with an average of about 150 units. Obviously, like we're working in one building. We just had a 2-hour meeting about called Georgetown Homes. It has 967 families, mostly project-based Section 8. It's huge. It's the largest in the state, or second largest in the state. That takes a huge amount of staff commitment to build a tenant group or sustain it. But a smaller building, like a senior high-rise building, is relatively easy, but it still takes time to, organize a group, support a committee, identify and develop leaders, provide training, work with the group to negotiate with the management company, maybe survey units for conditions. Those are the traditional things that an organizer does. So an organizer who's supervised and trained, that's essential. Somebody knows what they're doing, should be able to do 3 to 5 building tenant unions per year at the building level. That's been our experience. That will be the lens that we bring to looking at the proposals that you all submit.
So I see a lot of questions sort of asking what would be a reasonable budget for a building of X amount of units. I think Michael and Libby together provided a pretty good summary of the standards that will be used in evaluating your budgets. And sort of the blanket answer is that we'll consider all of your applications, individually, right, and work with you to put together a budget that both of us deem reasonable. So I'll just use that as sort of a blanket answer to all the building specific questions. We have a question. What are
I would only add for that, I strongly recommend that you start with a list of, what you would like to do and what those expenses are. Are you hiring someone? Are you a volunteer run organization that is just looking for training funds for all of your active members? Like, what is it that you are looking to pay for with these funds, and what do you think that is going to cost? Right? If you want to go to trainings, what is it going to cost to attend? What if it's in person? What is it going to cost to fly there? And hotel rooms, right? Cost all those things out first, and then see, okay, this is what our budget should look like.
And during the application process, we can provide some guidance about those things, like what the airfares are average from different cities, what the anticipated hotel rooms would be, what the registration would likely look like. We can do that. Also, in putting together your budget, if you're proposing to hire a staff person or multiple part-time people, document in your proposal, what the going rate is in your city. It's going to vary. I was talking to somebody yesterday in one city, and the salary scale is anywhere from 55 to 80,000, depending on experience and what the role is. So and then there's fringe on top of that, and every organization will be different. So you have to think about that in putting your budget in. I would say 100,000 a year, if you go for the max, is enough to hire a full-time organizer in pretty much any part of the country with fringe, and still leave money left over for some direct overhead costs, like a share of rent or costs for flyers, things like that, and also travel to a national training conference.
We have a couple more budget related questions. What are the budget requirements for indirect costs?
We don't have, I think HUD has already determined we are not including indirect costs. Like an indirect cost rate is not to be included, or to ask, it's very complicated to calculate those. There is a new de minimis amount that in the OMB guidance, but we're not allowing that. But direct costs, like there is a method you can use that OMB has recognized for many years to calculate the share of your space costs that the TEO staff would occupy. So let's say you had 3 staff people in your organization. One is full-time TEO, and you could then say approximately 1/3 of your staff of your rent is occupied by TEO, and that's called direct space allocation method, and you can apply that to rent, copy machine, things like that. Better to not include telephones because telephones can be used to lobby, and you cannot use TEO money to lobby directly or indirectly. Do not go there. That includes you can't, if you go to a tenant meeting or an organizer and you say, we want you to lobby Congress because they're cutting the budget, and the tenants are doing the lobbying, that's called grassroots lobbying. That is prohibited. You cannot use your TEO funded staff to do that. Now, if applicants are planning to do, it's totally legal to do lobbying around legislation as an organization within IRS limits. That's completely legal. You cannot use federal money for that. However, that's completely illegal. So you would be best advised to structure your budget so that that staff are able to lobby in a way that is not funded by federal funds. There are ways to do that. That's not that hard to work out. You need timesheets, and you have to strictly keep them and comply with them. But HUD can investigate grantees or do an audit, and you'll have to be prepared to defend yourself. But you want to protect yourself so that if you are doing lobbying, which is legal, you're not charging it directly or indirectly to the grant.
Yeah, and if I can just piggyback on that, it's lobbying on any level. So federal,
Right.
state, or local level, not
Your
just
city
not just
council.
Congress.
That's right. Your city council, your any elected any legislative body. You can work on administrative advocacy, right? Like meeting with a government agency to oversee a property. That's completely legal, and that's eligible as a TEO expense.
And on the phone thing, I would say that, I mean, especially if you need, for instance, a cell phone with a camera to take pictures of property conditions and share photos, or to have a number where tenants can call the outreach coordinator or something like that, that is fine. Just make sure, as Michael said, that that phone is not being used for any lobbying activities, only for your direct TEO activity. So it is an allowable cost. Just make sure that it's only being used appropriately.
Right. And well, I have a rule, once upon a time we were audited by HUD. This was 24 years ago, 25 years ago. There was a HUD, a congressionally mandated audit of Section 514 funds. And they had they had a no materiality standard, which was unprecedented. And Mass Alliance of Tenants was one of the groups that did not have any findings at all. There were only 14 groups that had no findings. So we came out clean on that. But a lot of groups didn't.
Just going back to the signature requirements. One question is the 50% dependent on the occupied units or just the available units? I believe we've answered that according to the terms of the NOFO, it is just the units that are occupied from which you need 50% endorsement. However, relatedly, some folks are asking, we have union cards that a majority of people have signed. Can we submit those, or would we have to submit union cards or other signature forms that pertain specifically to endorsing a TEO application?
So people need to know that this is what they're endorsing, right? Is the upshot. Just because someone has joined an organization in the past, I don't want to assume that that means that they're still still interested in supporting your application. As I said, we don't want to make this unnecessarily difficult, but we wouldn't accept a signature that was for another purpose, essentially, without any kind of warning that, hey, your signature means you're endorsing our application for this subaward.
We have another question. This person asks, the following language was taken from another recent HUD grant. Is this language that I'll explain likely to be the same or similar language included in this TEO grant? And the language that this attendee is quoting includes, the activities listed below are out of the program scope and will not be funded. 1, promoting or facilitating the violation of federal immigration law. 2, inculcating or promoting gender ideology, as defined in Executive Order 14168. 3, promoting or facilitating discriminatory programs or ideology, including illegal DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs. 4, activities that frame domestic violence or sexual assault as systemic social justice issues rather than criminal offenses. 6, programs that discourage collaboration with law enforcement or oppose or limit the role of police, prosecutors, or immigration enforcement in addressing violence against women. And 8, initiatives that prioritize illegal aliens over U.S. citizens and legal residents in receiving victim services and support. And 10, any activity or program that unlawfully violates an executive order.
So, that language is not included in the draft subrecipient cooperative agreement that I wrote. That agreement has not yet gotten final signature for us to start using it. But at least in the agreement that the program staff has drafted and which went through the Paperwork Reduction Act process last year, it is not included. I will say that executive orders traditionally tend not to be included in these type of agreements. There is instead language just generally that applicable laws and regulations have to be followed. So if there was a legal requirement that applied to the program activity, we would all need to follow it. But I do not believe that we will be including that language unless I am instructed otherwise.
All right, going back to the 50% signature requirement, can we get specific language that we could include on the signature forms about what it means to endorse this grant?
My only concern here is that, let's say that you have some tenants at a property who do not like the way that the tenant organization is run or have concerns about its financial management. I want to make sure that they don't accidentally sign something, not realizing that it will be interpreted as an endorsement just because they attended a meeting to complain about how the organization is being run, right? So yeah, I mean, and also, let's say that someone has previously participated in your organization, but no longer does. Maybe they just don't want to participate anymore, or don't like the way the organization does business, or is starting a different tenant organization that will work differently, right? I want to make sure that just because they were previously involved, that they aren't inadvertently being considered as endorsing your application, right? We don't want people to feel strong-armed or hoodwinked into endorsing an application that they don't actually want an organization to get. But that being said, right, as long as there's reasonable indication when they're signing that, hey, we're applying for this money, please, put your name and send your name and unit number showing that you support us applying for these funds on your behalf, to serve this property. And as long as they have that, so they understand that that's what they're signing, I think that's sufficient.
All right.
I think if it was a sign-in sheet for a meeting where that was explicitly on the agenda, I think that should work.
Yeah, just make sure that you have something at the top, that says, hey, this sign-in sheet is going to be used to support our application. Please sign your name and unit number, just so that if somebody is there to complain about how you're running things, they know not to sign it.
Right.
Maybe not a likely scenario, but still, we want to make sure that people have the right to know what their signature is being used for when they come to a meeting.
Okay.
All right. Last few questions here. Will the application include a budget form?
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't have to be perfect, you will have an opportunity to work with AHF and Mass Alliance. So if you have inadvertently included an ineligible cost or something that isn't reasonable, they'll work with you to figure out how to fix that so that you can move forward.
Another question, will this grant be available in the future? This person is saying that they have a property that's currently under RAD conversion, but is still considered public housing for the moment, so it wouldn't be eligible for TEO during this grant cycle. But they're asking, will TEO have future grant cycles?
That will probably depend in large part on the success of this TEO round.
Also, if all the money isn't used up, they could, it's first come, first serve, so they can apply later when they're ready. And if there's money left available, they could apply for that
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
during 5 years.
depends on when you're closing, right? Like if this is a RAD conversion that's in the very early stages and is years from closing, then they may not be able to be served in this round. But if they're closer to that closing date, then absolutely, if there are funds remaining, they could still apply. But yeah, I mean, I can never promise that Congress will do anything. They may appropriate more funds for the program. HUD leadership may decide to use funds again for this purpose in consultation with the Office of Management and Budget. But that decision is to be made by Congress and HUD leadership in the future. But I will say that if this tenant education and outreach effort that all of you are hopefully going to be applying for is successful, if we see a lot of issues being raised and resolved to the tenant organization's satisfaction and conditions improving at properties, then that would make a very strong case for Congress and HUD leadership to devote more money to this effort in the future.
And it's a 5-year period. There won't be new funds during the 5 years, I don't think. So during the 5 years, as soon as the property is converted to project-based rental assistance, not project-based vouchers, you have to check that at the front end, then you could apply for TEO money for that building. And if it's during that 5-year period, then and there's still money left, you can apply for it.
Right. As a note to the particular property in question that the person is referencing, they're saying it's converting to a light tech project-based voucher mix. Project-based vouchers are not eligible for TEO, so only a RAD conversion to project-based rental assistance would be eligible for TEO funding.
That building would not be eligible. That's right.
The next question, this person just asked, here's how we would approach the 50% rule to ensure it is as workable as possible. Prepare a statement for each building that will opt in each household to endorsement unless a household proactively opts out. And then they'll keep track of the unit numbers and names for those who opt out. Will that meet the NOFO requirement for the 50% signatures?
I don't
I
believe so. The NOFO said formal written endorsement were the exact words.
so
You
you're saying they
need a
would have to
positive
proactively
signature.
opt in rather
Yeah,
than.
well, so it doesn't actually say signature,
Mhm.
right? It says formal written endorsement. So I suppose it could be, for instance, a Microsoft form where they fill in their name and unit number and click submit, to say, that some, in response to a question like, do you support our application for TEO funds? It could be, a handwritten name and unit number on a sign-in sheet or a petition sheet, but they would have to proactively provide something in writing.
It
Yeah,
sounds like you need a
Jason
positive.
and Michael, if people propose something to you guys that you think meets the criteria of a formal written endorsement that I'm, not suggesting here, please feel free to run it past us. But yeah, the idea is that we can't assume that they support it simply because they don't respond.
Okay. Well, let's move through the remaining questions quickly. Would lobbying a tax board be considered a government agency? I.e., would that be
A what?
a
A what?
tax board? Would that be
No, it's not legislative. That would be administrative lobbying. That's
and
not
therefore would be
lobbying.
an eligible use of
Administrative
TEO funds?
advocacy. Yes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on how the 5-year performance period is anticipated to work with a 3-year funding commitment?
Oh, it's AHF and Mass Alliance have a 5-year period of performance, but that includes the period when they are marketing and approving applications. So for sub-awardees, it's 3 years out of the 5 years total that the program will run.
Right.
And then the big ticket question, what is our best estimate on when applications will open?
Libby.
Oh, I very much wish I had an answer by today. So I'm very hopeful that we will get the forms to Mass Alliance and AHF by the end of the month. But I do need to have final approval of the forms, right? The application form, the cooperative agreement that successful subrecipients will execute with Mass Alliance and AHF, and the other forms that will be used during, for instance, there's also a survey that we would be asking subrecipients to use, like a tell us about your home survey for tenants at participating buildings. Yeah, and so until we have approval to begin using those forms, we can't start the program. But we are working as fast as we can to get all the necessary approvals, and so hopefully, I mean, it's already September 4th. I guess later this fall is the goal.
All right. The last question to consider is, will there be a recording of this webinar available for the attendees? Yes, we'll make the recording available as soon as the webinar is over.
And Jason, there was a question about Does travel to Washington, D.C. for national conferences count as eligible costs in the grant? So we just want to, so tenant and organizing training costs and then travel to training events are covered. So you want to make sure something very similar to what Michael Kane was talking about earlier in terms of training conferences. So it wouldn't be any national conference, but it's something that you would put in the budget and then just make sure that it's an eligible cost within the TO grant for training.
Yes. Just for people that are remembering the way the NAT conferences operated, which I organized all of them for like 30 some years. Um, it was a 3-day conference. One day was the lobby day. 2 days were training. If we have a TEO conference, lobbying will not be part of it. There will not be a lobby day. That won't be there. But the workshops, the training workshops, and the meetings with HUD officials to talk about administrative policy and enforcement, those are all completely eligible under the grant. It would be very exciting opportunities. We might make it 3 days of training or something. The details have to be worked out. We will involve the TEO subawardees in planning any training conference, like what workshops to have, what panels to invite, and that sort of thing. So, but that's way down the road after the awards have been made. But it'll be similar to the NAT conferences regarding training, but not with any lobbying. And also, the NAT conferences had an annual meeting for NAT, and that's not part of this either.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I'll turn it over to Michael to close us out.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
this is great. This has been very interesting questions. I hope we answered them to your satisfaction. And I really want to thank Libby and Susie and Jason for their help in putting this on. There will be a second webinar for people that want to do it again or that missed this one. We're going to continue marketing the availability of the webinar. We hope to have our new TEO website up before then. And the second webinar is going to be on, I think it's Tuesday, the 24th.
Wednesday.
4 p.m. Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday the 24th.
Wednesday, the 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's Wednesday, the 24th at 4 p.m. Eastern to get people that worked for. And a number of people have signed up for that already. So we'll circulate this slide presentation and the recording to everyone and hopefully get more participation then. If you have other questions, bring it to that meeting. Thank you all for doing this. This is very exciting that we're finally getting going on this. Really excited to do that. It's especially, we have a lot of interest from cities and states around the country that have, to my knowledge, not had HUD tenant organizing. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to receive and award funds to a variety of groups all over the country, which could really make this an exciting vision. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.